African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's a misty, eerie morning out in the African bush. The sun is about to rise. This is Safari Live. Ready?
Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
So just walking. Morning everybody and welcome to this sunrise safari. It is a cold start to the morning, but a beautiful one nonetheless. My name is Tristan. On camera today I've got Craig, and out and about with me this morning will be James, Henry and Ferg. So we've got the little people on Wendy, and then we've got James and Sebastian on Rusty. And it promises to be a really good morning. It's we've had lots of sort of signs of animals this morning. We've heard elephants, so we're going to try and see if we can't find those elephants on foot. And I believe Jamie is looking for any signs of Tingana that was seen on the dam cam. Now remember, this is an interactive experience, so you can get hold of us on Twitter at #SafariLive if you have any questions or you just want to say hello. And if anybody saw any other things on the dam cam last night or heard anything, you're welcome to let us know as well. But it is really the most beautiful morning. You can see the sun that is coming up now over the sort of horizon, and all the mist that is filtering down is really just so beautiful. It's an epic morning out here, and hopefully somebody will find something in this mist, because it really is very pretty. So I'm hoping that we might find these elephants just ghosting along in the mist belt. I think they're somewhere down towards Philemon's Dip, so we're going to be heading down that direction to see. But it feels a bit eerie out here. It almost reminds me of when I was a younger boy, when I used to go fishing with my grandfather, and we used to go into the mountain areas, and it was misty like this, and you would go early morning to go trout fishing, and it would be misty, and it was really just quite an exciting experience. And I have that same sort of feeling about it this morning. Right, we're going to carry on, like I say, try to see if we can't find these elephants. While we do that, I believe James, Henry and the little people would like to say hello.
This, everybody, is quite possibly one of the most spectacular sunrises I've ever seen. But of course I probably say that every time I see a sunrise. I'm not going to ask Fergus to turn the camera towards me. My name is James Henry. Hello. Say hello, Fergus.
Hello.
Fergus is on camera, and we are currently looking at an apple leaf tree which is leaning over the top of the great golden orb of the sun that has just popped up through the mist and is turning the sky from, well, it was quite greyish this morning, not because of clouds, but because the dawn is grey, and it's turning it all sorts of shades of gold and orange, and above that, which we'll show you shortly, is a beautiful blue sky. #Safari Live is how you get hold of us, and that is what you must sorry, 1 second. #Safari Live is how you get hold of us. And you can ask us any questions, give us any comments. And Anna Marie sent through the first comment. She says, "Oh my goodness!" I think it was, "Oh my goodness, this is so wonderful." It is. It is just very special. And again, I'm not going to ask Fergus to move the camera just yet, but 180 degrees from where you're looking now, there is a herd of impala, which I will just describe to you. Once Fergus had enough of the sunrise, he can turn the camera for you. And they are walking through the mist, and they've now just been sort of covered in a gentle sort of, what would we say? It's almost like translucent golden cotton wool they're covered in. We're doing this very slowly, you see, because we don't want to jerk around a bit. We wanted to keep it as zen as possible. Good morning. And there, the impala. And as per usual at this time of year, a very subdued morning chorus. most noticeable sound is the metallic percussive sound of the parrots in the background, and then the crowned lapwings. And those impala are looking deeply upset about something. So whatever has made those lapwings upset, the impala are clearly... Now, this is very interesting. We are often asked about animal communication. Can animals talk to each other? Do they understand each other? These impala have recognized the call that those lapwings are making as an alarm call. They've all lifted their heads to look, or many of them have lifted their heads to look. Now, I don't know if Jamie mentioned this, but there were distress calls last night. There were calls of a male leopard around here. And, of course, only now that it's got light will we be able to have a really proper good look at what's going on. Now, Ali, you're saying, what is a leopard sawing? And you've never heard of the term. Well, it's the term given to the noise that they make when they're making their territorial call, Ali, and it sounds like a blunt wood saw hacking through a particularly hard piece of wood. So it goes a little bit like this. You can see how shocked the impala is. But that's basically what it sounds like, Ali. That's not why the impala's not conned into thinking that that's a leopard. It's just thinking, what a strange noise I'm making. But that's basically what it sounds like, and that's why it's called sawing. Is that not beautiful? And there you can see the sky is turning beautiful azure blue. Oh, and the tree, the framing is exceptional. And Blue Butterfrog, I must agree with you. You say you never get tired of looking at these sunrises. I don't get tired of it in the slightest either. I find it just so very inspiring every single time. That one at the front there is still looking quite disturbed, and I wonder if we shouldn't just roll slightly forward and see if we can't see what is causing their consternation. But while we do that, apparently Jamie Patterson has also got a view of the golden orb of the sun rising.
Isn't it absolutely gorgeous out here this morning? I mean, how's this view? So typically wintry South African low-veld. I couldn't love it more, especially when we're on fresh leopard tracks. A very good morning to all of you and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. My name is Jamie, and this morning Sebastian is on camera with me. We've both got a good feeling about this morning's safari, and it's already started off on an exciting note. Obviously, all of you letting us know that Tingana was seen on the dam camera this morning. I've got his tracks. They're going east along Buffelshoek cut line, and now we're involved in a race as to which of us can reach Torchwood first, because the way that Tingana moves, there's a good chance he's already well on his way there. He could be in the middle of the road, a couple of 100 meters in front of us, and we wouldn't see him. So we've got to hurry along and see if we can find him. Tingana, of course, for those of you that don't know, is the big dominant male leopard of this area, and he's been busy patrolling and calling throughout the misty night and the misty morning. I'm not stopping to show you his tracks, I'm afraid, because if I do, there's a chance we might lose him, so we just have to keep forging ahead to the east. I had such a lovely start planned for you this morning. I was going to do a horror movie beginning. It was going to be all creepy and eerie, but then Rusty's signal started playing up. So that didn't go quite according to plan. Are his tracks still here? Yes, his tracks are still here. There's a strong feeling of deja vu. I've tracked him along this road before and I've missed him before. I don't want that to happen this morning. Oh, Seb, that was a chili dip. Oh, there's a pretty... there's a very pretty kudu. Oh, too pretty to ignore. Not all about the leopards, even though the search for the leopard is happening relatively rapidly. There he is, off in the distance. Beautiful kudu ball. Not yet fully grown. He's still got another twist to his horns when he's fully mature. But they are one of our most striking antelope. You can see he's already got his cohort of oxpeckers keeping him company. They are early risers. I could have done with one this morning when I woke up and found a tick embedded in the skin between my fingers. Maybe I should tame an oxpecker, Seb, for camp. Can come and help us get rid of our tick problem. I was very cross. The kudu's got his friendly bird helpers to help him avoid that problem. Surprisingly tolerant kudu bull. They're usually quite nervous. This one is being very obliging. Unfortunately, in a situation where I'm going to have to move off the road in a few moments because there is somebody waiting behind me wanting to get past. Oh, Fleming Grimace! What did you smell there? See how he's lifting up his top lip, opening up the vomeral nasal organ, or the organ of Jacobson that sits sort of around about his palate, and basically tastes the smell. Opens up the pathway for all of those chemicals to enter into his mouth. All animals do it. I personally think rhino are the funniest looking when they do it. With their big white rhino, with their big wide top lip. Okay. Bye-bye, Mr. Kudu. I need to move off the road. And then I need to find this leopard. His tracks are beaming at me from the road. Okay. Let's get out of this person's way. It's not just myself and James out this morning, as excited as we are to be out. I'm sure Tristan is really enjoying walking in this beautiful vegetation this morning.
We are indeed, Jamie. We're getting very sidetracked on our looking for elephants because the views this morning with this mist and the sun filtering through the trees is really just so spectacular. It's hard not to just stop and admire the beauty of nature this morning. It really is a very, very pretty morning out here. And so we're still kind of ambling along, just enjoying the sun rising. It's also been so cold this morning that it was nice to have a bit of sort of warmth coming down now and feel this mist starting to rise. But at the end of the day, we do have a purpose out here, and so we are moving slowly in a sort of westerly direction towards where we heard these elephants. They were somewhere down in this thick mist. You can see in front of us it's very dense, and that's because we're going down to a low-lying area. And I'm sure the ellies were in there because generally you'll find that if it was a bit windy or if it's a bit cold, they go into thicker vegetation where they can get a little bit sort of more insulated area, and they stay in there. Now that the sun is rising, we're going to start to see them coming out and into these grasslands. Oh, there's a monkey. You see the monkey there, Craig? In the marula tree, the one in the middle with the fork. You can just see its head poking out of the fork of the tree there. So the monkeys were obviously sitting. Oh, he's hiding away now. The monkeys were sitting in these marula trees and probably roosting for the night, and now that the sun's come up and the mist is lifting, there's enough light for them to start moving away. I can just see it bounding away in the grass there and disappearing into the mist. So they'll be down now and starting to look for food and trying to find if little bits of vegetation while it's still nice and cool, and then you'll find that if they get a bit wet, because the grass is still very, very wet, you can actually see on my shoes already how wet they are just from walking through. So these monkeys, as they walk through this, are probably going to get quite damp, and you'll find then they'll go up into a tree when the sun's a little bit higher and then dry out. And we had that, I think it was yesterday morning or the morning before, where we had the Vervet monkeys all sitting in a tree, sunning themselves, keeping themselves nice and warm and drying out if they had been running through the long grass like this. Now I must tell you that the grass, the water on the grass is actually quite cold. As we're walking along, it's a bit chilly on the old legs, and maybe long pants would have been a better idea, but anyway, too late for that now, and we'll just have to carry on with the wet legs. It's what's interesting as well, it makes you just realize is how much water can be gleaned from this grass on mornings like this. So we often think that a lot of these animals, it's difficult for them to find food, find water, and that they have to travel long distances to get water. But actually, if they feed now in the early hours of the morning, they're going to be gaining a lot of moisture just from the grass itself, which means that they won't have to actively go to water in the mornings. You'll find in the afternoons they have to move to it, but in the mornings like now, they'll be able to get lots and lots of moisture just from the grass and vegetation that they're feeding off. What is going to be a bit of a struggle this morning is any of the smaller things. So we're going to find things like spiders and insects are going to be very inactive, and the reason why is because this cold weather is going to mean that a lot of them are going to have to sit and hold tight and get dry. A lot of the butterflies, their wings will be all wet, so they're going to have to wait until the sun gets up a little bit before they can actually start opening those wings, drying them before they can actually fly itself. So it might be a bit quiet on the insect front, but at least we know there's ellies not too far away, and so hopefully we should be able to find them. Now we're going to just carry on towards this drainage line and just see if we can't walk along it and see if there's any sign here. And while we do that, I believe James is still bumbling around in this beautiful morning mist.
Hello everybody again. We haven't moved much. I've just done one lap of quarantine just to see what was going on. Parrots shouting. There were a whole lot of squirrels alarm calling, but I'm afraid nothing else has turned up. That's okay. We will now head down towards the south and see what that brings us on this rather glorious morning. And as Fergus says, it is going to warm up quite quickly. One can already feel the sun, and that's nice. It's very pleasant indeed. And apparently I'm told today that it was 16 degrees Celsius, 61 Fahrenheit when we began our drive this morning. I'm not entirely sure that that's true. It felt a lot colder as I was sitting at my desk this morning. What else have we got here? Hello, Hassel the Hoff. What a name you have. I wonder if it's the real Hoff. What do you think? Quite something. How do you test if it's the real Hoff? It should probably be called the real Hoff then. The classic Hoff test, yes. What would that be? A picture with a life-saving...
No, you fall into the water.
Yes. Good. Okay, maybe yes. That's a good idea. We'll try. Forget it. Hassel the Hoff, your question is why are the animals so nonchalant around the vehicles? They are so nonchalant around the vehicles because they're so used to the vehicles. And so they have a very specific understanding of the threat that we pose. And let's have a look at these impala, and I'll explain it or show you just a little bit more about their nonchalance. Once we get to within, I'd say about 50 meters of them, they will start to move away and increase the distance slightly. So they'll just move slightly away up to about 50 meters. On foot, they won't let you get anywhere like that close. But in the vehicles, they'll let you get sometimes less than that, sometimes 25 meters or so. But then they will increase the distance. And that distance is increased very slowly if there's openness around. They can see where they're going. They'll move away quite quickly if they're in thick bush and they think that they are being cornered. But it's just Hassel the Hoff because they're used to us. They're used to our vehicles. It just doesn't worry them to be around us. No, I can't find any sign of anything that was showing any sort of form of distress here. And Lex said he definitely heard some distress calls.
have been a great honour if that was to happen off.
It would.
It'd be like the Berlin Wall coming down.
Now, Laura Moore, you're asking about how we tell a leopard saw from an impala grunt. Once you've... Sorry, Fergus is shouting at me now because he says he's got a lovely picture here to show us, which he does. Unfortunately, the impala has run away. But here comes another one, Fergus. Laura Moore, the sound, once you've heard them both, is completely impossible to confuse. The impala's call is much more of a sort of loud... It's how would I make it? I mean, our voices, my voice couldn't make the two different sounds, but a leopard saw is much deeper. It's unmistakably louder, and I suppose the frequency is that much lower. Whereas an impala's sort of grunt, if you like, is slightly higher pitched and not quite as regular. Each saw, if you like, is a different sound, or is a different length. But what's interesting is that I've never thought that they have sounded the same, because I've lived in an environment where I've heard them both. But as you say that to me, as you say, well, you know, how do you tell the difference? It's quite interesting because, yeah, I suppose if you don't hear them all the time, I suppose it could be possible to confuse them. I'm just going to quickly ask Chantel, who's directing today, to ask Jamie if she's going to the hyena den or not. If not, I mean, we're pretty close by. I think we might go, actually. Never mind. Apparently there are some hyenas there. And given the lack of any obvious distress here, I think we'll do that. Let's pop down the road here, we're not far away. It is amazing how quickly it warms up once the sun is up, and that's a sign that we're not into proper winter yet. Once we're into proper winter, it'll stay cold till about 8 o'clock in the morning. Whereas already now, it's almost time for me to take my leggy blankie off. There, a lovely misty shot as we drive past the valley of the... Well, that river doesn't even have a name. It's a tributary of the great Mluamati, which has barely got a name. I suppose it could be called Philemon's drainage. Wow, it's pretty. Philemon's drain. I was going on yesterday or 2 days ago about drainage lines and how we as presenters are constantly talking about animals going into or out of drainage lines, their tracks going into or out of drainage lines, the impassability of various drainage lines. Now, if there is one thing one likes to see in the mist other than gorillas, for example, it is a elephant.
Indeed, James, this is really very, very special, but we're having to keep our voices down because these elephants are very, very close. Unfortunately, because of the mist, we didn't see them until we were really very, very close to them. And so there's a female and a couple of calves that are just ahead of us that are starting just to move a little bit southwards, which is good for us because they're heading to an area where there's better proposition for us to be able to actually see them better. Where we are now, we've got very little cover. In fact, we've got no cover whatsoever. We've just got some trees that we're hiding behind and hoping that these ellies don't see us or hear us. The good thing is our wind is in the right way and it's blowing towards us from where they are, and so in all likelihood they shouldn't pick us up. But this is a really big herd. We can hear elephants all around us. And so what I'm hoping is that they're going to push south a little bit, and they're going to go towards a whole bunch more termite mounds. And when they get there, then it becomes a lot safer for us because we can get up onto those termite mounds and we can then view them. But it is so amazing to see these ellies in the mist and there's steam coming off them as they're breathing and moving. And then you've got the sun and the rays just filtering in from the side. It is such a magical scene and something that really will stick with me for a very long time. We have been absolutely spoiled by elephants in the last few weeks. Well, last few days, should I say, not weeks. And you can hear some francolins in the distance. Now those francolins are just getting going for the morning, so that's why they're making a racket. It's not that anything is chasing them, it's just their sort of morning call. But that female elephant is definitely aware that something's afoot. She's stopping and she's listening every now and then, and she's now obviously satisfied that we're not too much of a threat, or she hasn't picked our smell up and is now carrying on and moving. You can see her little calf right by her side. What a beautiful scene this is. Now I'm just trying to see if we can recognize which herd this is. Difficult to say because of the amount of sort of vegetation there is and the fact that we're right on the back end of this herd. It's difficult to see who they are and whether or not it's a herd we've been seeing over the last few days, but I suspect it is. I suspect it's the same herd that we might have had yesterday afternoon around Spaghetti Junction and Vulture's Nest. It's not too far from where we are now and they could have easily come round and back, but it's so exciting to be on foot with elephants in weather like this. It's one of those kind of dream sightings. You always think about seeing animals in the mist, and especially with that golden light filtering from the back, and so to find them on foot is just that much better. It kind of adds to this eerie, misty morning that we're having. Now, it seems like they've started to move off a little bit, so I think we're going to try and reposition so that we can't get a better visual, because it's very, very difficult from where we are. So, John, you're asking what would we do if the elephants headed our way? Well, John, from where we are now is not great. Normally we would have tried to have headed towards a termite mound or something like that, but we don't really have much of that here. So our best option would have been to head straight across here. There's like a little drainage or a little sort of dry riverbed section behind us here that's got quite steep banks. So we would have tried to head across there, and then there's a big mound on the other side of that scotia tree that we would have tried to get onto and try and stay safe up there. But it would have been a bit of a sort of hustle, because if those elephants had come this way, we would have had to have done it very, very quietly. They're already aware that there's something going on, and when I was talking, you could see that female was stopping and her ears were out, and it acts like a big satellite dish so that she can hear what's going on and try and pick up the sounds. And so we would have had to have done it very sneakily to get out. But it's not the best place to be for viewing elephants on foot, and that's why we need to try and probably find a better way around them and find a better area that we can actually see them nicely, but also be very safe about it. So I think let's carry on and see if we can't get to something like that. And it's quite funny, we actually ended up walking right past them because the mist has now lifted a little bit, even in the time that we've been with these ellies. But at first the mist was really quite bad, and we only just noticed it because we heard one of them break a branch and they were right next to us. So it's quite difficult in this, and that's why walking in mist like this is often very, very, very dangerous. But let's carry on and see. It's now starting to get a little bit better, and I believe James has found something that he would like to show you that's also just as great in the mist.
Well, it's gone. The hyena clan is here. I've just seen the one cub. There were 3 adults here, and suddenly there was a great consternation, a great yipping and yakking, and they disappeared, all of them, suddenly as you came to us. Now, I will tell you that the cub that went in there had its penis or pseudo-penis extended, and it's definitely a male. So there's one male, and we haven't seen the other cub. There's an adult disappearing off into the mist there. I don't even think you're going to be able to see that. You see it there? One coming back now. You see it there, Ferg?
No.
Just to the right there. I'm going to just try and move into the area there.
Okay, but I have
You've got to... Somebody gave somebody a nip. Now, if you are a new viewer, there were 2 hyena cubs here. And since we've named them Ntima and Lamula via the voting of our TV audience last Sunday, I must tell you that I think one of them is gone. I think one of them has been killed. There is only one cub here now. Lex has been here for some time, and there's only one cub here at the moment, and it's a male. I've definitely seen that it's a male, and you can tell that by the pinched end that there is to what is not a pseudo-penis but a real penis. And if you're wondering what all that's about, it is because hyenas have this unique feature of having false male genitalia. The females have false male genitalia, so it's very, very difficult to sex them. There's some consternation going on here. I don't know what they're upset about. The cubs disappeared into the hole. You can see those adults looking a bit alarmed. Heads up, tails up, smelling, listening. And the cub still showing no signs of coming out of its hole. Let's just move a little bit around there. In fact, let's go around the other way, because we do know that that hole goes all the way through the den. What I don't want to do is sandwich the hyenas between Lex and I. So we'll just go around this side. Sad that they seem to have lost one. And unusual, you know, especially if that one's a male. I think that the chances of there have been a sort of canism or siblicide are very, very small. So I don't think the cub would have killed its sibling. And if that isn't the case, it's very strange for hyenas to lose their youngsters because, well, they're just so very secure normally in the den site. Much more so than young leopards or young lions. Now, John, you're asking why the females have got fake male genitalia, and it's extremely difficult to say. I mean, from a physical point of view, we know why they have fake male genitalia, because they've got extremely high testosterone levels, and that extremely high testosterone levels results in this development of, I mean, they've got higher testosterone level than the males, and that results in these enlarged, very enlarged clitorises, which in turn look like, or which are called pseudo-penises. And interestingly, the hyena gives birth through that organ and mates through it, although it obviously doesn't function completely like a penis does. But the evolutionary reason for why it should be like that is very difficult to sort of separate out. Why it would have developed like that is difficult to say, because it presents an extremely difficult birth canal. Young cubs often die. The first cubs of a female hyena often die in childbirth or cub birth, because it is just so very, the design of the birth canal is so very narrow, and although it does hurt the female, it doesn't kill her, but it often kills the cub. So why they have it is difficult to say. Good morning. Just the one cub, Lex? Just the one cub? Okay. Yeah, no, Tristan apparently also the other day mentioned only one cub, and Lex has only seen one cub here, so I think that is the case, that one of them has been unfortunately removed from this mortal coil rather too soon. The adults have filtered off down there through the mist, and I don't know that they're going to come back, so I think we had a brief, nice view of the hyenas. We'll sit here for another 3 minutes or so, and then we'll probably press on and see what else we can find. We'll just have one last look into the front of the den there. So in the meantime, let's head across to Jamie Patterson, who has managed to find herself a large swimming thing.
Found a couple of large swimming things, although they're not doing... oh, excuse me, that took me by surprise. They're not doing very much swimming. And just quickly, I do hope that that other hyena cub is okay. But I guess we won't know for sure for a little while. But this is a very, very pretty scene at Buffelshoek Dam. Steam rising off the water, steam rising off the hippopotamus. It really is quite gorgeous. It would be even more gorgeous, Seb. Do you know how it could be more gorgeous?
I know.
I know you know. If Tingana was here instead of crossing north into Buffelshoek, the leopard that we were searching for has gone a-wandering. But I'm staying in this area because I don't think he's going to go too far into Buffelshoek. He doesn't usually. I'm hoping he might actually come back into this area and continue on his eastward patrol. The mist is still here, the sun slowly but surely burning it off. It has created a very, very atmospheric, if somewhat chilly morning. And the hippos seem to be enjoying it. They're in high spirits. The other day I was watching one of these hippo, I'm not sure which one it was, I think it was the one on the left, play. And he was kind of climbing on top of the other hippo and rolling around and really just having porpoising in the water. Showing off for us. I didn't get the impression or the feeling that he was in any way feeling threatened by us. It was just quite a playful process. It's enjoyable to see hippopotamus play like that. I think that's the bull over there on the right. Lots of snorting. Don't forget to send through your questions on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. For all of our new viewers, that's the way that you can get hold of us and find out more about the amazing creatures. That hippo looks so happy. Dozing quietly. Seb, I think we should stay here for a while. Call and response. Apparently the hippo thought my idea of us staying here was laughable. Yes, I know there's work to be done. It is very nice and warm in the sun, though. I did a silly thing earlier. I was busy looking for Tingana with my binoculars and promptly looked straight at the reflection of the sun in the water. So I've still got spots dancing on my eyeballs. It was not an enjoyable experience. Still waiting for those purple dots to go away. Kids, don't ever do that. Don't ever, you should never look at the sun regardless, but don't ever look at it through binoculars either. Good morning to Natalie, who would like to know what is our favourite water-dwelling animal to see in the wild. I'm going to cheat here and say a whale. Particularly when we get the whale migrations through the coast of along the coast of South Africa, the southern right whales, the humpback whales, and dolphins as well. But that isn't really what you mean, is it? I assume you're talking about in this particular area. Oh, what would be my favourite creature to see? I guess I'd say a monitor lizard. No, I take that back. White-faced whistling ducks. Quite like white-faced whistling ducks. Not that I don't enjoy seeing hippopotamus as well. Seb, what's your favourite aquatic creature? That's a difficult one.
I would say croc, but if in action.
Crocodile, but crocodile in action.
Yeah,
which is a rare and
yeah.
unexpected experience, unless... Well, it's something we're going to see lots of in the Mara. As the migration comes through. I know the crocodiles there are waiting patiently for the wildebeest and the gazelle to arrive. But a crocodile is an intimidating thing.
Otherwise, hippos are not far behind, also when they're active.
That's also true. A hippopotamus when active.
Very nice to film when they play or fight.
They are awesome to film. I apologize if I am getting your name wrong, talking about how much we love to see hippo and when they're yawning and all of that. Bakawas? I hope I'm getting that right. If I'm not, I do apologize. You want to know, where are the baby hippos? Where do they stay? And the answer to that is they stay with their mothers in the water. And you could even get a situation like the one that we have here, where the baby hippo, the mum might keep it a little bit separate from the rest of the pod while it's still very, very tiny and not really able to fend for itself. And what they'll do is the baby hippos will sleep on mum's back, because they're too small for their little feet to reach the ground, or their little legs to reach the ground at the bottom of the waterhole. So they'll climb up onto mum's back and they'll sleep there. So we do see baby hippos. There's actually quite a few at Chitwa Dam, which is further to the south and to the east of where we are. But unfortunately no baby hippos here. We do have far less hippopotamus than we did have 2 years ago, and that is a product of the drought. Several of them were removed and taken to areas where there was more water, in the Waterberg, and then of course a few of them did perish in the drought just because there was absolutely no food for them to eat. It wasn't so much the water, although that was also crucial to the hippo, but the fact that there was just no grass. And when you're 2 tons of animal, close to 2 tons of animal, not having any food is quite a serious thing. I love the steam coming out of their nostrils. It's so cool. Oh, good morning to Randy. Thank you for sending through your question on the sunrise safari. You want to know if hippos give birth in the water or on land. They give birth in the water. There are a few cases where a female has given birth on the land, but the baby is usually born underwater and immediately has that instinct to kick up and push towards the surface and take its first breath, of course guided and nuzzled by the mother. So hippopotamus will give birth and they will mate in the water itself, which I think is quite incredible. That little baby, it's like a whale or a dolphin, born with that instinct to go straight for oxygen. I can hear a ground hornbill calling somewhere. Very far away. I don't think you'd be able to hear it. Nerdy Zombie, you want to know if they make the grunts through the mouth or through the nose. Kind of a combination of the two, actually, as far as I know. I know that as far as I know, they have a larynx, and that does make a sound, but it's kind of amplified and resonates. Kind of like if you were going, opening up the back of your throat and creating a resonating chamber through your sinuses. That's what hippopotamus do. So it's a back of the throat combined with the nose kind of a combination. It's not a trumpet. I mean, you can see they snort. They make a noise by snorting, and that's purely utilizing the nose. It seems as though the big creatures are dominating this morning. Let's go across to James, who's also found some ellies for you.
I am an enormous creature, and that's why I'm dominating everybody. I also don't ever feel the cold because I'm so manly. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, obviously, these very large elephants that are sitting next to that magnificent picture that Fergus created for you there. Was it not wonderful? And they're feeding very gently through this very thick kind of riverine vegetation on the fringes of the Fergus?
Philemon's
Drainage line. Yes, Philemon's drain. They're walking through Philemon's drain as we speak. And the reason, or one of the reasons they've come to Philemon's drain, is that Philemon's drain is now full of water, and it's full of water because another elephant, probably not from this herd, has pulled up the pipe from which we get all of our water. And so there is water all over the place now. That will unfortunately occupy much of the day, I suspect, for our maintenance crew. They are very naughty, these elephants. And they're having a wonderful time now walking along. In the early morning, they love this weather. It's nice and cool for them. There's lots of moisture on the food, which means that they will probably not be nearly as thirsty as they are normally, of course, because elephants get enormously thirsty on account of the fact that, well, they've just need a huge amount of water because of the dry food that they normally eat. We will follow them. We'll follow them along the road called Ingwe Alley shortly. That's just up, down through there. Let's have one more look at this beautiful scene here. Ali, sorry, I missed your question. I'm going to get it again. What was that? Ali, I'm afraid I don't understand your question, and that's not a fault of your question, it's a fault of me, I'm sure. You say, are the elephant's ears sensitive based on their size? I'm afraid I don't... In other words, the bigger they are they more sensitive? Oh, you mean their ability to hear? Probably. I don't think so for elephants so much. Remember that the ear here does not function in the same way that a wild dog's or cat's ear functions. It functions completely differently. Oh dear, we seem to be rolling forward. What happens with something like a wild dog or a cat is that their ears are like satellite dishes, so they focus the sound into the middle of the ear, and so the bigger they are, the more effective they are at picking up sound. A wild dog's a great example. They have exceptional hearing. An elephant's ear is designed completely differently. An elephant's ear is designed not for hearing. Well, obviously the inner ear is designed for hearing, but the rest of the ear is designed to keep the animal cool. They've got those blood vessels that flow through the ears, and they flap, and the blood cools and it goes to the brain. They are in no way cupped around the opening to the ear, and so they therefore don't make any difference to the ability that the elephant has to hear. I'm sure if they open them out like that, which often you do see them do, and then they turn their heads and their face, that probably does allow the sound to sort of all doesn't filter the sound, it concentrates the sound into the ear, but by and large when they're walking along, they're just flapping their ears along like this. I think it probably almost acts as a hindrance if they're trying to pick exactly where a sound is coming from. If you do this, when you're next listening to something, you'll find that your field of hearing narrows very much, but that you're able to pick up sounds quite nicely from a unidirectional position. And so when the elephant opens its ears out, yes, I imagine it probably does hear a certain amount better, but by and large they're not designed in the same way that something like a wild dog's or a cat's ears would be. Here comes said maintenance crew. That's very impressive efficiency. I'm just going to tell him that there are elephants on either side of the road. Kunatin lopo, marungawari. And Shelley, you're asking a question that is very much in line with so many of the questions that we as human beings, or so many of the aspects of animal behavior that interest us as human beings, because we want to know how much or how closely animals' behavior mirrors our own. I know that it's horribly backlit, Fergus, but I'm afraid I can't do anything about it. You say, would a mother elephant recognize her son once he'd left the herd? And the answer, Shelley, is quite probably. I don't know for sure, but you know, they are so intelligent, they're so socially astute, they're so socially connected to each other that I can't imagine she wouldn't have some knowledge of her son once he'd left the herd. Whether she would be friendly to him or not, I don't know. Whether there is affection or not, I don't know. There's often big bulls are a real pain to have around in the herd. There's still a lot of mist there as we watch the silhouettes of the elephants moving off towards the east, and I can't do anything about the light, I'm afraid. There's just simply too much bush for me to move around them. We've had some wonderful time with elephants over the last little while, last few days. I think the maintenance crew has just assessed the pipe problem and decided that a fairly major overhaul is going to be required, so he's headed back towards the camp. It does of course mean that Sebastian and Jamie will probably not be able to shower today. Shame. That little one there, just finding his way in the world, wondering if his mummy will recognize him when he's eventually called upon to leave the herd. Jamie, you ask a very astute question. You say, given their mass, do they sleep on their sides? Would they sleep on their sides? And the answer, Jamie, is some of them. Little ones, yes, absolutely, they sleep on their sides. But once they get bigger, once they get to about the size of the elephant you're looking at there, they tend not to. They tend to sometimes lean on termite mounds, so they'll sort of lean up against a mound and have a bit of a snooze like that. Otherwise, they sleep standing up. And that is because of the pooling of blood. Because they're so big, and because there is so much blood pumping around in them, the effect of gravity when they lie down is to pool the blood in one part of the body. Now, in much the same way as it does with you, if you would lie, and people who are bedridden often have problems with this, and they get bed sores from it, and they get, I forget exactly what the medical term is, but they basically get a pooling of the blood in parts of the body where, you know, it would normally be pumped around or pumped out of if you move around. And elephants have that much quicker because they are so much larger. There's also a pressure that builds up on the organs. Because their organs are so massive, a pressure builds up on them if they lie on their sides for too long. And so although you will sometimes find an enormous bull lying down on his side, it won't be for very long. And you know, they sleep so little. So a big bull probably only sleeps around about 4 hours a day, unlike the average Sabi Sand guide who sleeps sort of 20 hours a day. And Fratan, you just asked that question of how many hours they will sleep a day. The latest research, and that's all done on captive elephants, so, you know, it's difficult to extrapolate entirely to the elephant population at large. But the latest research shows that elephants sleep probably for about 4 hours a day, sometimes less, sometimes 2 or so. And interestingly also, if they miss out on sleep for whatever reason, they don't then catch it up. So they can do with very little sleep. And it's because they have to eat so much. You'll find normally on the same diet, and the larger the animal, the less it will have to sleep. So, for example, elephants will have to sleep much less than, say, kudu. And I know their diet isn't exactly the same, but they're both herbivores and they both do quite a lot of browsing. I'm trying to get you some nice light here, Fergus. I hope you appreciate that.
I do indeed.
And Adele, you're wondering if I've ever been chased by elephants. Yes, I have. And it is to my shame, normally. I'm just going to stop here and just calm my voice a bit, because we are quite close to them now. Adele, from time to time I have been chased by elephants. Oh, look at this. But almost always, Adele, it's because I have been insensitive to them. I have not paid attention or sufficient attention to their body language, where their body language has very clearly said to me, well, not obviously not very clearly, but has said to me, we're uncomfortable, please move away. And normally if you watch their body language carefully, you can escape being chased by them. I've had 2 or 3 incidents where an elephant has come barreling out of the bush for absolutely no apparent reason. I mean, there must have been some reason, but no apparent reason. Barreling out of the bush straight at me and straight at the car, and I've had to just drop a gear and drive away as fast as possible. That is very unusual, though, and I know that there are many who would like to intimate that the environment in which we live and in which we find ourselves is tremendously dangerous, and that this elephant, which is now only 25 meters or 20 meters from us, could charge at the drop of a hat. It really is not true that she would just turn around and come at us. She would give us some indication that she was unhappy. She's given us no such indication now, so I'm comfortable to be this close to her. If she did decide to turn and just come at me, well, then we'd probably be in some trouble, but given that she's giving no indication of discomfort, I'm happy to be parked where we are. The other thing, Adele, is that if you are unsure of elephants, if you perhaps drive into the Kruger Park on your own, it's always a good idea to first read about, of course, the animals that you're going to see there and what to look out for, but also to make sure that if you do see an elephant, that you have a forward escape route. You do not want to be reversing away from an elephant that you have irritated by mistake. And so you keep your distance and just make sure that you have a forward escape route, always. But this herd is very relaxed, and I would consider it highly surprising were one of them to turn around and show us sufficient discomfort to chase us. Emmanuel, I'm not sure I know the answer to this. You say, how long does it take them to digest this food? How long does it take for the food to go in one end and come out the other? Manuel, I'm going to say, because they are herbivores, they've got long digestive systems or long intestines. I'm going to say at least, except that it's not meat, of course, it takes a lot longer to digest, and they do push so much through. I'm going to say about an hour. I'm going to say within an hour, that is not going to be used for nutritional purposes will emerge in a soccer ball-sized bolus from the back. Let's go a little bit forward. But I'm not entirely sure. Imagine going to your university supervisor and saying, Professor von Splinkenstein, I have a research proposal. Yes, what is that research proposal? Well, I would like to know how long it takes an elephant to eat something and then produce it from the back end. And astoundingly, Professor von Splinkenstein would probably say that's an excellent idea. Well, then you would probably get money to do it. Tristan is not talking absolute nonsense like me. He's going to make some sense to you now.
Well, James, we've crept our way into the middle of this herd, and we can actually hear James talking, so he's on the other side of the herd from where we are. But we've found ourselves a beautiful big termite mound that we've gotten on top, and we've now got a beautiful view of this herd around us, and it is an amazing sight. But we're having to be quite quiet because there's literally elephants coming out of every bush at this stage, and so we're trying not to disturb any of them. The object of these walks is to try and get in, view these animals, and get out without providing any sort of disturbance to the herd itself. And so right now we're just sitting and enjoying the sort of peaceful, tranquil sounds of these ellies feeding all around us, and it sounds like there might be some more coming from behind us as well, which is going to be great if they all do come this way. I'm hoping they're going to come out a little bit, but in terms of a bushwalk, this is about as good as it gets for elephants. They sometimes can come a bit closer, but this is a nice, happy, safe distance. We've got a really nice termite mound that we're on, and so everything is very, very pretty indeed, and we're very happy where we are now, which is good. Now the rest of the herd, and the herd that we saw originally, is off on our left hand side, and this is now another herd that is starting to join in. So it seems like two different herds that are coming together where we are, and it's going to be quite amazing just to see where they go. What I'm hoping is that they continue the direction that they're going, in a sort of southerly direction, because from where we are now, if we just cross over onto that ridge on the other side, if they keep moving there, it's going to be perfect for us to be able to stay there. Now you can see some of them are just feeding along. So Leslie, in Alabama, you're wondering which animal has the highest survival rate. Well, in terms of probably the young that's born and how they kind of go from there, I would imagine elephant is probably the highest one out of the mammals. At the end of the day, there's very, very little out here that can kill an elephant. When they are babies, they can sometimes succumb to predators like hyena and lion, but that's very, very seldom, particularly in an area like this. The lions here very seldom will hunt an elephant. There's so many other animals that they can go after instead that you'll find that they don't hunt elephants much at all. And so generally a calf that is born does make it to adulthood when it comes to elephants. They also don't suffer from too many diseases, so they're not animals that will pick up anthrax or foot and mouth and really die from it extensively like some of the herbivores. They can sometimes get it and die. There's been, funny enough, recently a case of a elephant dying from TB, which was contracted from human TB strain, which is very, very odd. And so they can sometimes be susceptible to that, but that's probably because their immune systems were compromised during the drought last year, and that's why one died of it. But generally they're very resistant to diseases, and so I would say elephants are most definitely one of the ones that have a very good survival rate. Them and rhinos, in terms of natural predators, there's very little for both of those species. Now you can see how Ellies are just slowly drifting off into the bush again. So what we'll probably have to do is just try and get around them and get onto the northern side of them and see if we can't get a better visual. If they start going up that ridge on the other side, it will be amazing because they'll start emerging from this thicket and into the open. But while we do that, let's go across to Jamie, who's got an antelope that's probably one of the most beautiful in Africa.
Oh, that's a bold statement, Tristan. There's a couple of very, very beautiful antelope in Africa. I would definitely say the Kudu's right up there. But what about something like a bongo? But yes, Kudu are truly very beautiful. They've also all vanished. True to form, that is what Kudu do. They like to disappear off into the thickets. There's a couple of really tiny young Kudu with this particular herd, and I'm sitting quite far back because the little ones are very, very skittish. And I don't want to frighten them because as soon as they startle, then the rest of the herd panics as well. It's that very, very typical antelope herd mentality. You could use a little grooming, little one. Gangly and fluffy. They're going to pop out in front of us here, Seb. There we go. There's about 3 little ones, and if you get really lucky in a Kudu sighting, you can actually watch the babies play with each other. They sort of run round and round and round and round in circles, and there's 4 of them all gathered together now, and probably aiming to warm up after a chilly evening. I'm just going silent for a second. I just want to listen to something. I think I can hear guinea fowl alarm calling where Tingana's tracks go off into Buffelshoek. That's very frustrating. But anyway, we'll swallow that thought and watch these Kudu. They definitely don't want to meet Tingana. They would be a perfect meal for an adult male leopard. I've always found it fascinating to look at their stripes that run down the side of their bodies. Obviously, each and every one is unique, just like zebra stripes, leopard spots, all of that. But I've always found it interesting to look at the genetic connection between the stripes on the Kudus. We don't really have the opportunity to get to know individual Kudu on these live safaris, not really. We don't often sit and observe them that closely, and we don't see them we have no guarantee of seeing them each and every day. But I assume the same principle applies in the way that it does with Nyala. And I often you find regularly with Camp Nyala, you will have an opportunity to watch several generations grow up. Little lambs going slowly from little tiny fluffy things to adults. And I promise you can see there's a connection in the genetics between the stripes of the mother and the stripes of the baby. Now, Kim, you want to know why are the kudu referred to as the ghost of the bush? In a situation where you've got really skittish kudu, when they're not accustomed to safari vehicles at all, they have an ability to just disappear into dense vegetation. They're not like impala or wildebeest that like big open plains. They like to disappear off into somewhere where there's a thicket, and they can hide themselves away in there. And they really do, with their stripes, they almost melt. Let's go over to Tristan.
So we were about to leave our termite mound, but another herd has just come from behind us, and this is amazing. They really are quite close. You can see that one is just listening, and it's probably because the wind is actually drifting a little bit to them. It's not much, but there is a little bit of a breeze, but it really is not more than, I would say, 50 meters from where we are. But because we're on this termite mound, we're more than safe, and the rest of the herd is stretching to sort of the right-hand side, and it sounds like there might even be more of them coming along. This herd is absolutely massive, if indeed it all is all one herd. There really are lots and lots of elephants coming our way. But isn't this incredible? There's very few experiences like being with a herd of elephants on foot. And if you read a lot of books out there, and a lot of guide trainers will tell you that you shouldn't really be approaching elephant herds on foot and that they're very dangerous. And yes, they are very dangerous, but an elephant herd, it can also be quite a magical experience. If you're just clever about what you do and you get into yourselves into good positions and you don't take risks, you can have some of the most memorable elephant walks with elephant herds. So it's sometimes one of those things that you've got to do, and I was fortunate enough to train under somebody that really thoroughly enjoyed walking into elephants, and so learned a lot from them. And it means that you can actually get into places where you can view elephant herds with relative safety. And where we are now is as safe as it gets. Now, unfortunately, that elephant changed direction. I was hoping it was going to come out a little bit further towards us, but you can see they're all sitting now feeding. They're completely relaxed. If they were aware of our presence, you would have found that they would have been facing us, ears would have been flared, heads would have been up, and they would have been really kind of watching what's going on. I think they're aware that there is something around, because the one just kind of cocked its ears a little bit, but they can't really determine where it is. And because we're up on the mound, our scent is not going to be on the ground, and so for them, they're going to sort of battle to pick up where exactly we are, and they therefore rather just take it easy and not sort of come anywhere near us and just carry on their feeding behavior. But I can hear a few more of them that seem to be drifting through. Now, there is a big gap that's coming up, and I'm hoping that this one is going to come through that gap, because then we'll be able to see them really nicely. Now, I know it's not as close and as sort of open as what you would get on a vehicle, but this is about as good as you'll ever get on a bushwalk with a herd of elephants. Any closer than this, and you're risking your safety. But we are really being spoiled this morning, and there we go. We can see them just starting to come out through that little gap now, and hopefully there'll be more of them that will sort of start making their way out and show us all of them. Craig, are you having fun?
Yeah.
So, Shamson, you're wondering if there's any difference between the low-felt elephants that we get here or elephants that you get in forests. Well, yes, there is. A forest elephant is a subspecies of the African elephant. This is the savanna elephant, and so they have small differences that set them apart. Forest elephants tend to be much smaller, and the reason why is because they've got to move through thick vegetation, a lot thicker than what we have here, and they've got to sort of negotiate these slippery floors and difficult places to get to, and so their body size tends to be a lot smaller. Brent, who's up in the Mara and one of our fellow presenters, he's been up to Gabon and spent quite a bit of time with forest elephants, and he was telling me that the big males there are about the size of our big females and smaller, so they are a lot smaller. They tend to also have very, very long, thin tusks. Very seldom that you get these big, thick-tusked elephants like what we see here. Here we see our males get these massive, thick, round tusks, whereas the forest elephants tend to be a lot more narrow and thinner. And you'll find that the habits and the way that they move around will be slightly different. They'll obviously adapt adapted to different environments, and so each one will be feeding off different plant material and will have different sort of ways of moving around. Also, the herds will be much smaller than what you see here. Now, from our elephants that are just bypassing us to James, who's got a baby elephant that I'm sure is much closer and much more in the open.
There we have a little elephant, which we've seen before, of course, but this one has now found itself a mud pie to play in. And it's interesting to me that the youngsters just don't seem to have to eat as much as the adults. They will spend much more time fiddling about and playing, and yet you would think that once they're weaned, which this one almost certainly has, that they would have an extremely high nutritional need because, of course, they are growing. But I always find that the adults seem to spend much more time feeding than the youngsters, which I think is quite strange. Anyway, this one is having a little bit of a drink, but it's largely playing mud pies in this pan, which does not have the kind of water that elephants normally like to drink. You can hear a squirrel alarm calling for some reason. I'm not sure why it would be doing that. And as Fergus was saying, it's amazing how the light has changed so fast today. We had about 40 minutes of that beautiful golden light, and it's just turned sort of plain pure white almost immediately. And it's still, it's still quite misty, but there's not a lot of dust in the air. So maybe that's what it is. Here we have one of the adults coming closer to us. She's been creating a bit of a stink amongst the trees in this area. Poor trees are copping it a bit today. And all around I can hear elephants knocking this, picking up pieces of grass here and there. Just a little bit of a that sort of thing, that sort of skin rubbing that they do. You just hear whoock. Oh dear, this tree's going, Fergus. It's all over. It's all over for that poor tree. No. It's survived. That's astounding. Now, Canadian Emily, you're wondering if the elephants don't have tusks, how much does it affect them? I don't think it affects them that much. I think they get used to it quite quickly. And I think that after a little while, it becomes almost insignificant to them. Yes, might it knock a little bit of time off their lives? I suppose it's possible. I suppose that it's possible that because they are more stressed, they're going to have less, they'll have less opportunity, and it'll be more difficult for them to get at bark and nutritious foods like that. It'll be a little bit more difficult for them to break off branches when they're trying to feed on branches during the dry season. So I suppose at the end of their lives it might sort of knock a few years off, but it's astounding. There are hundreds of elephants that are born without tusks, and they survive just fine. I'm not sure the role that big tusks play in reproduction, so I'm not sure how much big tusks affect the way that elephants are attracted to each other. Look at the way the mist, well, not the mist, but the breath is showing there from that little elephant. But I think, I think the bigger tuskers possibly have a slightly easier time finding mates, but enormous tusks are often a hindrance to elephants. They're not normally particularly useful, and I guess a bit like a peacock's tail, therefore you'll probably find that it does have some sort of reproductive function, because as a defensive mechanism, tusks that are sort of mid-sized are probably the most effective, and those enormous tusks are really quite a hindrance if you're trying to feed. So, for example, that elephant you're looking at now has got really ideal shaped tusks to break trees and to get, what was I going to say? To break trees and to break branches. But enormous sort of tusks that reach onto the ground, I think you'll find are probably less than ideal for that sort of thing. Now there's a young bull in front of us who's thinking about giving us a little bit of trouble. He's looking at us from time to time and sort of obviously thinking about whether or not we are something that he can threaten with his enormousness. But now he's sort of looking embarrassed and putting his nose in his mouth. So, of course, tusks are massively important to elephants, but they're not necessarily hugely necessary to survival. Now, Gilby Safarian, you say baby elephants eat less because they are drinking milk. Well, yes, of course, but as I said about that other one, the one that we were watching, I'm sure that one's weaned. And so once they have weaned, they still seem to be able to spend a lot more time playing than the adults do, and you would expect them to have to eat a lot more, I would have thought. But yes, certainly while they're drinking milk, of course they would have to eat far less. And what's quite interesting, I think, is, how often is it that we as adults have tried to make children eat, or have been made to eat when we were youngsters, when we are just not hungry? And, you've got to eat your veggies, you've got to eat your fruit, you've got to eat this, you've got to eat that, you've got to have your 3 meals a day, you've got to eat a good breakfast, or you can't go to school and function properly. And half the time, I think it's absolute nonsense. Out here, these young elephants eat when they're hungry, they eat when they're ready to eat, they don't eat otherwise. And yet we've got it in our heads that we have to tell our kids when to eat and what to eat, as if their bodies won't tell them themselves. And there was that fascinating experiment that they did with children, and they put them into a room, I think a few times, or many times, with plates, tables full of nutritious kind of meat and veg and, the healthy foods, and then plates of cakes and sweets. And after, I think it was 2 or 3 tries, nobody by choice went towards the cakes and sweets. They all went towards the food that was nutritious. In other words, their bodies told them what they needed to be eating. And I think the same goes for the elephants, and probably for our own human children as well. The problem is, of course, with human children, the option to eat yourself into a sugar oblivion these days is just too easy. But you don't get that much sugar out of a silver cluster leaf tree, which is what these ones are devouring now. Now, I believe that Jamie Patterson has managed to find some tracks, I'm hoping at the end of which will be some lions.
Me too, James. I also hope at the end of them will be some lions. Look how beautiful this. There are absolutely crisp, clear, beautiful tracks. I've been distracted by the leopard, but lions walked all over the eastern boundary of Djuma last night. Which lions, we ask? Well, here comes the confusing part. Have a look at this. We've got tracks going north. We've got tracks going south. We've got tracks on top of tracks on top of tracks on top of tracks. Up and down the road. Absolutely everywhere. This entire road is just one big lion track. But they really are utterly stunning in this morning light. In fact, I don't think I've ever had such clear lion tracks before in my entire life. And I suppose I should jump off and just show you what makes them a lion track. I think that's quite an important thing for our new viewers. Now let's pick a track. Let me jump out. Let me pick a track and then we can talk about it quickly. Which was the one that was bouncing out so nicely? Was it this one? Was it this one? Oh, they are so lovely. Now you'd think it would be pretty easy, don't you, to figure out, well, which tracks are on top of which tracks. Ha! I wish. Because all tracks are on top of all tracks. I think the ones going south are fresher than the ones going north. So there we go. The 3 lobes at the back of the foot, much, much more distinct and much fatter than that of a leopard track, even a big male leopard track, which could be almost the same size as this track, because whatever lions these are, they've got cubs with them, biggish cubs. There's their big, quite narrow, elongated toes over here, all suggesting to me that we've got lions, an entire pride of lions walking around somewhere here. I almost hoped, these tracks were so fresh and so beautiful, I almost hoped that I was going to get growled at when I got out of the car. I just thought maybe they'd be right here, but they're not, and they're confusing me. Luckily, Lex is in the area as well. He's going to be trying to figure out, and of course Lex, one of the other guides, he can also go, if they're on Torchwood, he can go east and let us know which lion pride they are. So where on earth do we go? And actually, where am I? I'm going to figure it out, but I'm going to send you over to James for now with another elephant.
Yes, she does.
Almost trap her nose.
Hello everybody. There's another herd moving along here. And they're just walking along exactly the same road. They're coming towards us, so we've just stopped where we are. And we're going to wait and let them walk past. Just 4 of them. It's not our half-trunk herd. And the little one is looking, that one there that's looking absolutely fine. The little one's looking a little bit nervous, just lifting her ears out. And that's not the matriarch, the one that is shaking her head at us now, with her funny sort of, almost noodle-like tusks, is not the matriarch, but I think her mother, who is over there, I think that's the matriarch, and I think it's her mother because, as Fergus pointed out, tusks are kind of funny. They're sort of skinny and sticky-outy, and both of these cows have got very similar tusks, and I wonder if there isn't a genetic component there. Again, showing no sort of indication of displeasure, and so we'll just sit here and watch them. We were sort of leaving the sighting to see what else we could find, and then this other herd came along, and it's a little bit like the one we were watching on foot yesterday morning, almost exactly at this time, on the drainage line to the south of this one. I wonder if it's not the same herd coming along. And there were just 5 or 6 groupings of herds, and there was a little gap in between each, and I think that's what we're seeing here now. And silver cluster leaf is on the menu today. It's really very interesting. Every single elephant we've been watching today has been eating the silver cluster leaf tree. And I don't know why that should be. I can only assume that as we move towards the sort of time of the year, the tannin content of those leaves is probably starting to drop slightly. And what that means is that they become much easier to eat, and the protein available in the leaves becomes that much more accessible. Now, Tina, you're wondering if an elephant can eat anything to make its tusks bigger. I don't think so, no. I think, we've chatted quite a lot about tusk size of late. I think it's largely genetic. I think there's a genetic limit to how big an elephant's tusks can be, depending on who its parents were, what its lineage is. And I think that if it doesn't eat properly as a youngster, well, then it could probably have stunted tusks. But I think you'll find that very little in the way of nutrition is going to change the size of the tusks, in the same way that nutrition will not change the size of your teeth. Very nice. Okay, we're going to press on now. I'm not going to ask Fergus to continue to film elephants into the light.
It was very nice to film with the light.
Yes, I'm sure it was. There we go. Marvellous. Good, peaceful feeling given to us by the elephants, and I'm now getting a very warm feeling from the sun. Now I believe that Jamie is still on her tracks, so let's go and find out how that's going.
Very, very fresh. Very confusing though. Just bear with me 1 second. I need to chat to one of the guides. Standing by. Copy, thanks Lex. Sure, it's confusing here. I don't know, if you want to cut junction, there's tracks going east and west. I've still got tracks on central going west, but I'm not sure which way these lines have gone. All the tracks are on top of each other. Okay, cool. Maybe it'll get a bit clearer as you go further along the road. Phew, confusing. I'm just chatting to Lex. There's tracks of the sticks crossing into Djuma on Gowrie Main. There's tracks of the sticks crossing into Torchwood. There's tracks of the sticks crossing into Djuma. There's tracks of the sticks absolutely everywhere, and it's shades of what Tristan said he experienced yesterday on the sunrise safari. No, you see, these are fresh and they've got cubs with them. Fresh, but not fresh before the dew. Fresh, soft sand. Look at this. Beautiful lion tracks again. I promise I'm not going to do the entire safari on lion tracks. Where are you ladies? You're here somewhere. There they go. In the soft sand. Alright. Seb, we're going to find these lions. Unless they're on Torchwood, in which case they've pulled a very, very sneaky maneuver. Because I had exactly the same tracks. I might have taken a little walk a little bit further east of Cheetah Cut Line, and I had exactly the same tracks going the opposite direction. I don't know what these lions were up to last night. Marching. Why? Searching for food, I guess. This is very puzzling. I'm going to search for the biggest predator. James is with the biggest mammal of them all.